Hi everyone, thanks for joining today. Today I'm really excited because we're announcing, actually we just already announced this morning, a brand new part of the Google Drive SDK called the Google Drive Realtime API. This is, I think, one of the coolest APIs that we've done in a while, definitely very forward-looking. And for today's GDL, I want to give you just a quick overview of what the Realtime API is, why it's important, show you a couple of the tools and the samples that we've built. But over the next few weeks, we'll go into a lot more detail on a lot of these topics. I believe next Friday, we'll show you how to get started with the API with our Quickstart. Next week, we'll have one of the engineers who actually worked on the API join us for some Q&A. And of course, as we hear more from the community, we'll be back with additional topics. But today, we're just going to focus on an overview and some quick demos. But first, the Realtime API is pretty simple. It's a JavaScript API that allows you to access a persistent model that can be manipulated by multiple users in real time to give you the same level of interactivity and collaboration that you see in our own applications that are built around Google Drive. So Google Docs, spreadsheets, presentations are all well known for the collaborative features that are built into the editors. With this API, you can now build other applications that users need for productivity that have that same level of interactivity. This really dovetails nicely with some of the features that we've been releasing over the past few months. Back in the fall, we added commenting. Of course, sharing has always been a part of the API. But when you throw all those together between sharing, commenting, and real-time collaboration, it's now very possible and very easy to build applications like Google Docs at the same level of rich interactivity, but can cover a whole bunch of different domains. And we'll talk about some of the use cases a little bit later on. First thing I just want to show you is if you are interested in getting started with the API, you can find the documentation at developers.google.com/drive/realtime. And there's a few different things on here to help you get started. There's some quick start code. This is a really simple JavaScript application. Some helper classes to make it really easy to get started. Of course, the developer's guide will introduce you to all the different concepts for working with it. It's actually very simple. If you're familiar with standard data structures like maps and lists and JSON objects and, of course, strings, you can build an app using this API. If you want to dive a little bit more into it without writing code, but get a feel for how it works, what some of the features are, what exactly it means to have these type of real-time features, we have the Realtime API Playground. I'll show you that app and walk through it in just a moment. And then, of course, you can go and read more about it, understand the event models and look at the source. Lots of cool stuff. So first thing I want to show you actually is a really cool tool called the Realtime API Playground. This was developed by one of the colleagues on the DevRel team here. It's a really cool app. And it walks you through the process of working with real-time documents. First thing you need to understand is these are models and documents that are stored in Google Drive. So you can think, just like we have Word documents and presentations and slides. We can have other things. So it could be images. They can be project management applications. It could be drawings, charts. Videos that we're editing, lots of different things that people want to work on together. But these models and all these real-time features are geared around files in Drive. First thing we need to do with an app is authorize. I've already done that, but this is standard OAuth 2. We've seen it all before. It's on all our quick starts and sample applications. The next thing is we create a document. I've already done this, and we can actually go back over to Drive. And we can see a file that I created earlier. This is a new, the standard name that the Playground gives you. Of course, you can rename this, share it, invite other people to collaborate with us. For right now, I'm just going to collaborate just with myself. I have two different browsers open, and we'll see how that works. Of course, we can, if we have a file that somebody shared with us, we can open it. This is just using our standard JavaScript Picker API. Of course, you can see the same file is here as well. And if you want to share it, we can do that as well. Again, this is the sharing widget that has been part of the Drive SDK for a while now. So we have a file, we've created it, we shared it. In this case, I just have two windows side by side here. I'll switch back and forth just to show you a little bit of what's going on. But the first thing is, let's talk about some of the objects that we can have in the real-time API. Kind of the obvious one is strings. We have here, a string that we can do, and this is really fun. You can see as I type, we see all these different events here. And this is actually character by character. Actually, some of them are a little bit aggregated depending on how fast I type. But, we see what is actually being sent. So these events, the way it works, this is based on operational transform. So as we type and we make changes to the model, or strings or objects within it, the API is figuring out what exactly changed. So if it's a string, if it's a character insertion, we'll generate insert XYZ at this position. Likewise, if we delete and then reinsert, we'll see a delete event followed by the inserts. So all these deltas are being applied locally and then sent back to be applied to the persistent model. If somebody else is making changes, those changes are resolved. They're reordered so that everything makes sense and then rebroadcast out. And you can see over here in this other window, that string has been updated. And if you actually watch, we have both of these visible here. So as I type, you can see there's a little bit of lag. It's probably a few hundred milliseconds. But as I type, you can see in the background window that text is being updated. Strings are the first one. Strings are particularly interesting because there's some additional behaviors that are pretty important for usability, and particularly the issue of cursor management. So I'm not entirely sure if this has been implemented in here, but it's actually a little hard to show with just one browser. But I have my cursor here right before the N. And if I go and delete, let's say, delete really. OK, so this is actually a case of showing why it's actually good that I showed this. So you notice that my cursor moved. It didn't actually change position. Actually, where the position is the offset, but not logically in the string where I really wanted my cursor to stay at neat. Part of the API is a set of utilities to help manage cursor position as these events happen. So you can implement this yourself. You can sit there and listen for string events and detect when a character is added or character is deleted and figure out where your cursor should be. But part of the API is a set of binders. These are really simple things. You just say connect this string to this text field, and we'll actually do some of that for you. So not actually implemented in the real-time playground. It's something that we'll add so you can see just how that works. But beyond strings, of course, we have collections. Obvious one are lists. You can see here, let's scroll down. Keep that visible in the background. And let's add lemurs. I like lemurs. You can see that was added to the list. I also like sloths. I think they're ridiculously cute. You can see these added. Likewise, you can come back up here and remove sheep. Again, you can see that's been removed. You can see the event up here. So we had events that we added, things that were removed. You could do the same thing for maps as well. And we can see down here. And then the last thing, which is actually kind of cool, is if you don't like working with generic collections, you can define your own objects. So here we have. I could actually even see the source code. So just key value pairs. Let's actually jump directly to the source. Actually, even better than the source. Let's just share the docs. Let's go to Developer's Guide and building a data model. So you can have code in your application that basically looks like this. You can define objects. You can tell us about the different properties on your object that are persistent and should be collaborative. And then once you have those, you just access these just like a regular JavaScript object. Turns out to be really, really simple. Sorry for zooming in a little too far there. But you can actually see here how this is done. We create a constructor just like we would normally. We do need to register this type so that We know how these things should be stored. We actually, the API is designed so that you can evolve your models over time. So there are symbolic names for all your types and for your properties. Do a bunch declaring our fields, create, add some listeners if we want to track changes, and of course just deal with our property. Really simple. The nice thing with the real-time playground is, well, besides just giving you a good idea of how things work and letting you see the events, you can actually open up the Chrome dev tools. You can watch the wire traffic just to get a sense of what the payloads look like as they're being sent across the wire. But the cool thing is, for each of these, you can go back to the reference docs for this feature, talk about strings, talk about lists, and the source code is available for this as well on GitHub. You can go to github.com/Google Drive and see the real-time playground source. There's also another example app, which I think is really cool, is a real-time collaborative 3D cube. Again, I'm not really collaborating with anyone in particular right now, but let me make these visible. So now what we can do is we can start to mess up our cube, and you can see as I turn this in one, you can see the changes reflected here, and likewise, if I go over here, everything is mirrored in the other one. And of course, we can have this with as many collaborators, as well. If you have 4 or 5 people in there, that's just fine. And part of the API, you can see this in the app here, this list of collaborators, and the same thing here in the real-time API playground. So this is actually something that's built into the API, is the notion of collaborators. We can actually see what happens if I exit out of this document. We're going to see I dropped off from this window. And we actually see an event, user closed the document. I can now go back and rejoin, and pretty soon we're going to see user opened. So it's a great way if you want to have presence built into your application. You can just subscribe for those events. We'll tell you anytime that another user joins that session, or if they leave, and you can, of course, render this. And even things like the profile photos of the users are available as part of the API, along with the name of the person that you're collaborating with. So you can build some really cool, very, very interactive collaborative applications with this. And we actually worked with a couple of external developers to build some proof of concepts of this. If you've seen today's blog post, there are 3 apps that are mentioned, and which worth talking about briefly. The first is Ganter. Ganter is a project management application. It lets you build Gantt charts, set up your project plans. They've updated their application so that it has the same sort of real-time collaboration features that you've seen here. So yeah, if you change the due date on a project, anyone who's in there and updating their tasks will see everyone's changes, pretty much immediately. Again, the latency with this is actually really surprisingly good. Only a few hundred milliseconds, and basically the same that you would see within Google Docs or Slides or Sheets. So Ganter, very cool app. Definitely encourage people to check it out. The other is Draw.io. This is a technology demo from the people who do JGraph. They do a graphing library, but they have this really cool charting application that lets you build everything from flow charts to electrical diagrams to mock-ups. Very, very large template library of shapes. And again, they enable the real-time features, so now you can store those drawings in Drive in a way that is persistent, so that when people are in the diagram drawing, if I move a shape or I add a shape, you'll actually see that. Other collaborators will see those happen. They actually do some really interesting things around visual clues to let you know when a collaborator did something, and sort of things like flashing a border around a shape that was moved by a collaborator, and they match the colors with the collaborators up here. We can see them both green. Really cool thing. Really good use of visual clues there. Ganter also does some really interesting things. Just going back a brief moment for Ganter, they do some interesting things with building integrated chat into their application using the real-time API in addition to having the model. And then the last one I want to mention is Neutron Drive. This is an online IDE that is backed by Google Drive. So you can use it for editing text files. You could also use it for editing source. And they're doing some cool things in that they're actually letting you work with multiple documents at the same time. It's a really cool app. Kind of fills a void in Google Drive in terms of just working with source code or working with plain text files. And one thing really important about Neutron Drive is they actually do some really cool stuff with syncing the real-time model. So the this representation of the file in a way that we can do these operational transforms on, and then syncing those changes back to the underlying text file, so that if you have the sync client installed and you're having those files copied down to your desktop, maybe you're using an IDE for when you're offline. All that works pretty seamlessly. There are a number of issues that come up when you try to do these types of things, but there's actually some really good resources in the SDK documentation that talks about this, particularly using collaborative models with files. Talks about some of the issues that happens when you want to work with some sort of external serialized format, say an image or a text file, Visio diagrams, whatever that may be. Trying to enable collaborative features on these is a little bit more complicated than if you were a purely collaborative app, something like Google Docs, for example. But it is possible. Just read through these guides. We'll actually probably have another GDL to go into this topic in particular. There's a lot of things to talk about here, but I don't want to go into too much detail today. But really, just for now, I just want to give you a taste of what the API is about. Show off some of the demos, and that's about it. Really, I've been, for the past couple of months, been playing around doing a couple sample apps that I'll be adding to GitHub. It is an incredibly fun API to play with. It is highly satisfying, primarily because you don't have to worry about all that much. So a lot of the applications have been pure JavaScript applications, and not even using a server. Technically, you could serve your application out of Google Drive using the ability to serve directories as resources. It doesn't require a server. Authentication is, use your Google account. You can take advantage of things like the new Google Plus sign-in. The files themselves, the data is persisted in Drive. So I create a file in Drive, I attach a real-time model to it, and then I just work with that as if it were just a local data structure in memory. And it's persistent. I can close the browser, come back 3 days later, open the file from Drive, and I'm exactly where I left off. If other people were in there making changes, I see all those changes. Doing things like presents are incredibly easy, and you saw with the API playground how you can add things like sharing and the file picker and everything. And you can build these really powerful apps just with JavaScript and HTML5, and not have to worry about scaling. You don't have to worry about your servers. Really, the only thing you need to be able to do is serve some HTML and some JavaScript and whatever assets you need for your application, and you're good to go. So really powerful. I'm incredibly excited to see what people start to build with this API. It does open up a whole bunch of different use cases. Certainly with Docs, we're very proud of the applications that we have. We think, we cover a lot of the core productivity, applications, but there's a whole bunch of applications that people need, to do their jobs on a day-to-day basis. We're not going to build all of them, but many of them would benefit from having real-time collaboration. It'd be seen from Draw.io and Ganter. I think these are and Neutron Drive. These are all really useful applications that benefit from real-time collaboration. But I would love to see things like collaborative video editing, or audio editing. Different charting applications, drawing, specialized editors for different cases. If you like to author scripts. I know there's some great web apps out there that help people do that. That could be made collaborative as well. Really just about anything. If you work with documents, the Real-Time API is definitely something to check out. that is, I think, all I want to cover today for the overview. Again, we're going to be back to talk about this and a couple of topics I mentioned earlier. On Friday, we'll be talking about the Quickstart. Just give you a quick overview of it, but not going to go into a lot of detail. But really easy, takes about 5 minutes to get this set up, and you can start to play with it, learn how to use the code. Actually, you can see here, it's all about 100 lines of HTML and JavaScript. So Friday we'll be back. We'll go into this in a lot more detail, show you how you can take the Quickstart and modify it a little bit to start exploring some of the other features. We'll be back again next Tuesday with Brian Carnes, who's one of the engineers who worked on this API, and we'll have a chat with him, go through some questions. So that should be a really great session. And of course, there's a whole bunch of other things that we can talk about. If there's particular things that you would like to know about the Real-Time API, join us in our Google Plus community. We have Google Drive developers. Post questions there. We will certainly will respond to them in the community, but they'll also help us determine what we're going to talk about with Brian and in future GDLs about this. If you have ideas for what you would like to build, let us know. Again, I'm really excited. I think this opens up a whole bunch of new opportunities for developers to build really powerful, really amazing applications. So let us know if you have an idea, what you're working on. If you have any questions, we're here to help. But other than that, I'm very excited. I have a whole bunch of ideas for my own of sample apps I want to do. So yeah, we'll keep updating our GitHub repository. So keep an eye on that. If you use Angular, I've been playing a lot with that. This API plus Angular is nearly magical. It's actually a really beautiful development experience. So we'll see some samples there as well. But really just go out and try the API. It's really fun, really satisfying. And of course, we look forward to seeing what everyone builds. So on that note, I'm going to end today's GDL, but again, reach us in the community if you have questions, comments, ideas. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks.